Welcome back, everybody. You have tuned in to the Game Development live stream. This is the stream where I talk to game developers, game publishers, people actually building games. So this isn't like reviewers, pundits, fans, like people that build games for a living. And what we try to unearth is success in this industry. Game designs, game publishing strategies, go-to-market strategies, financing strategies from the people who are in the trenches of this industry. My name's John Radoff. I am one of the founders and the CEO of a company called Beamable. We make live services infrastructure. So if you build an online game, we can help. Social systems, online systems, everything from real-time multiplayer to blockchain integration, Web 2, Web 3, all of it. Like we help with all of that stuff. That's what my company does. I have a background in game development. I shipped about 20 million copies of games like Game of Thrones, Star Trek, Walking Dead, Archer, to free-to-play mobile customers before I started Beamable. So I have lived the pain and the joy of building games. It's the greatest art form. It's the greatest commercial entertainment industry that we've got. I'm proud to be part of it. And today I have got a couple of people with me. First of all, I've got Oscar, who teams up with me, has been doing this for I don't know how long. We've been doing this all year long at this point. Oscar keeps this on track. He is going to watch the questions and the comments from you. We are on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, X, and a hell of a lot of people on X. So, we're watching all those channels. Post your questions, ask questions, because we do this in a live format so that you get to actually be actively involved instead of just watching a YouTube video. Like you get to ask the questions. So that's cool. Makes my life a little bit easier, but it makes it a lot more interesting for you because you get to learn a little bit of what exactly you wanted. So like I said, we love to bring on people who are in the trenches of this industry building games. So I'm super excited here today because we've got an awesome guest, Kristian Metzger, and he has launched a game today. We'll get to that in a moment. This is amazing to me that someone even has time to stream with us on a day that a game has launched. But Kristian has a background in publishing a bunch of games, MMO games, has been in this industry for a while. Actually, let's start there, Kristian. Share with us what has gotten you to this point in time and space on this live stream today, shipping a game today. Like, what is your background? And then I want to go right into the game because that's exciting news.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, John, for having me, and Oscar. Yeah, I am in the industry forever. I think my first ever article, I was a game journalist many, many years ago, was 1999, and I did an article about Homeworld. Funnily, the game that I 20 years later were happy to make a mobile version of for Gearbox. I come to that later in a bit. And I started my career as a game journalist, and then slowly, basically became bigger. Worked for Eurogamer. Before that, I was a big esportler, Counter-Strike, German Championship, stuff like that. So I was always games was in my DNA since the beginning, and so game journalism. After game journalism, I switched to the typical way. I switched to communications. I worked at Splash Damage, big studio in the UK. They did Dirty Bomb and a lot of cool games. Worked on big IP like Gears of War. And then at one point I thought, yeah, sure, why not? I do my own studio. Knowing back then, I thought, yeah, how hard can it be? And believe me, the last 10 years had a lot of ups, but also quite a bit of downs. Let's say it like that. We were there when there was no money at the beginning. That we were there when there was a lot of money in the middle, and we are now here where there is also less money again. So I think I have a quite good understanding. Is like what happened in the last 10 years. And it was quite a ride so far. I can tell you, it's something that the games industry is astonishing me every day. When it's on the good side and on the bad side. So that's where I am. So like a long career in gaming, and yeah, now we are at a studio having 3 live games, and yeah. So and now I'm ended up with you, John, and that's a pleasure and honor as well.
Awesome. Okay, so first of all, I am impressed that you literally launched a game today and you have time to be on this live stream. So first of all, I think that means I'm not saying it wasn't stressful. I bet it was because I've been through game launches, but it must have gone pretty well if you have time to be here today. So
Yeah.
tell us about the game.
Yeah, so the game is called The Kingdom Medieval Life Tales, which is basically a game that it's taking it's a little bit like you can imagine it. Oh yeah, there you see. It is a fantasy universe. I don't know if you know The Sims Medieval. That was one of the ideas that we basically had, basically trying to show what kind of life you have in this medieval world, and you fight a little bit, but you also grow stuff. You build, you tailor. You have you fight monsters, but also you can here you see fight monsters and dragons, and then but also you tailor clothes, you bake bakery stuff. There's a lot of fantasy in it, and the reason why I can be here because it's based on Dawn of Ages. So Dawn of Ages was our last big title, which was released last year. And Dawn of Ages is our so far most successful title, over 3.5 million downloads we have in total. And the game and what we did is for the first time we took basically Dawn of Ages and then used this technical framework to build now the kingdom. And the cool bit about that was it just took us around 8 months from zero, like a few concepts and ideas, to release. And that was just possible because we just basically took the all the basics that we had, all the frameworks that we had, the ECS systems behind it, the fighting systems, and we basically changed the core gameplay loop. But overall, we reused a lot of these systems, and that allowed us to basically be so quick to the market. And that's why it is not a new system. It's not a new tech. It is existing tech that we build up. It is Azure-based cloud services that run in the background. We had a little hiccup in the morning where one of the databases were anyways was a bit too was a bottleneck, but that's the after we had that out of the way. Also Apple took a little bit longer to review, like always, but now yeah, Beam, I know. That's a good point. Yeah, but so basically what happened is everything basically got solved by midday, and now we will monitor. Tomorrow there's an event going live, and next week we'll do some follow-up patches with but this is, like I said, it is very well used to us, and the tech is basically built by the same team. And this is something that we did in this current situation that is so important, is we now, a lot of the games are built on a similar tech so that we can share and distribute, because when it comes to art, but also on the tech side, super important. When you have smaller teams, you have not the same financial background anymore. You have smaller teams, then it's really, really good to be able to share these resources and also have fallback when there's fucking holidays and stuff like that. So yeah, that's basically the special thing about the kingdom. It is based on an existing game, and we had one interesting other thing. It is also a co-production with a TV company here in Germany. There's a big TV company, and they have this TV show, and it's part of the TV narrative. There's basically a guy that has a game studio, and they created this game. So it's
Neat.
that's
So you got a transmedia element too.
there's a transmedia element. Yeah. We all dream of the transmedia. I don't know how it with you. I sold transmedia quite a few times, but this time it basically worked out. So yeah, that's why I'm here. Tomorrow morning is a new day. We'll see what the first numbers bring in, but yeah, so far everything is stable.
So let's zoom out the camera lens a little bit. So you just described the game and you reused a lot of tech that you had in place in another game. Describe the studio for us. Like, how do you explain to the rest of the world, whether it's your customers, whether it's the publishers, like, what's the studio? What's your core expertise? What kind of games do you make?
Yeah, so our games are all economy, social, multiplayer games. That's the core components. Cross-platform is another element that is important for us. Dawn of Ages is on Steam. Our shooter Desolation is on Steam. And the core expertise that we have is everything that's economy drifting. crafting,
Mhm.
RPG elements, loot elements, these kind of things. That is what makes us tick. And all our games are mid to hardcore, so we don't do hardcore, very casual games. All of them have complex systems. That is what is driving us. And I would explain it like that. So like in the golden years, or in the years where we all got lots of money, we were able to extend our expertise. So we started with mainly doing Homeworld was our first big title, building that. But basically with the funding that we got, and a functionality is called German Games Fund. That was from Germany, basically additional development funding. We were able to basically build something like frameworks. One is a strategy framework, and one is a shooter framework, shooter RPG framework. And these two frameworks are currently the baseline of what's driving us. And now in the current environment, where the getting money is much harder, what we basically do is like we're now focusing on these kind of core elements what we are good at, and where we have the tech, and where we can quickly iterate. I mean, we just built for one of our next titles. We built a prototype in 3 weeks. We just basically took the core battle element of Dawn of Ages and made a prototype for that. And that kind of things is super important as a studio, I think, nowadays, to be flexible, to be adapting constantly to the market. I mean, using more in AI, but like I said, there could be another AI conversation, probably a bigger one. But I can tell you that we are using it now a bit more. But overall, I would say we still, the key component is being effective, and that's something that drives us. Being not, because you don't have that money anymore. You have to focus on being effective with your time and your people.
All right. So you see
Mhm.
this? This is the Pandora's box called
I,
AI that you just opened up. So
I'm so sorry.
so we're gonna
No,
we're gonna
no.
come back. No. It's all, we always are interested in like understanding how studios approach AI. So
Yeah.
we will come back to that. And the other piece that I definitely want to come back to is funding, because you've been very successful funding your games with
Yeah.
traditional publishers.
With
The
both.
current
Yeah.
game published with Boombit. Okay, we'll come back to
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
before I even can get back to that, since so many people are just game developers who tune in here, I really want to get down to what are some of the big life lessons you have earned. I'm going to say not only learned, but you've earned them, because we all suffer through a lot of pain here in this industry to learn any of these things. But what are some of those life lessons about game development generally, or if you want to be specific, like your kind of economy driven MMO type things that
Yeah.
you can share with everybody, that
Yeah.
they could like save some people some pain here? Like,
I think
just
I
listen
think
to a guy who's actually built this stuff successfully.
Yeah. So let's say it like that. I think that one of the core things is everyone is underestimating timing. My
Mm,
experience in 10 years is the timing. So like I think the baseline is you have to be good. You have to be kick ass. I think that's the baseline that everyone in the games industry and in any industry has to be. But the other point is fucking timing. And a lot of times when I talk to other founders that are super successful, they sometimes, when you talk with them like privately, they say, yeah, it was just some of that was pure luck. Again, baseline is you have to be fucking good, yeah, and you have to be sometimes have to have the right feeling, yeah. But so many times it's timing. And whenever someone tells you, no, I have it figured out, I don't need timing, I'm just that good, I think 99% of the people lying. It's like, even in my surrounding, I have super success. I have a friend which did a like $300 million euro exit, um, and he tried to replicate it. After he tried to replicate it, and I thought, oh, how hard can it be? Because I did it, so I mastered it. And but the timing was different. That was when he did his exit. It was the peak of funding coming into. There was the interest rates were low. There was no other investments there, so he was at peak, and he tried to replicate it now, and he just survived the whole deal and made his money back that he invested. So that is for him now the success, but he was not able to fully replicate. And these kind of things are really important to understand. I think timing is crucial. The problem is, and now comes the next wisdom, is it's hard to predict something. So it means you start something now. As an example, you go now into AI. The moment you have something out, it could be that AI will be not going away, but the AI will be not at the same space it is now anymore. So that's the second problem that you have. It's super hard. It's even with game development. When you start a game, you're doing the game based on how is the genre currently doing. Yeah, we are one of our next game is planned to be in 4X game because 4X is doing kick ass at the moment on mobile. They were one of the most successful last year, and they are one of the few genres where they still make where they break in the top 50 in their first year, and that's really really rare nowadays. But the point is, it can be when we are talking when the game's coming out next year, end of next year or something like that. It could be that that 4X genre you can still support it with good work, good UA, all these other things, but there's also timing. Like with idle games, idle games were the shit for a while. They made shit tons of money. They were super super successful, and now they're not that hot anymore. So, and because it has all influence on your organics, because like certain things are not found, but also other elements like how you get funding, all these kind of things come together. So overall I would say um, you just have to work hard and have to have a portion of luck, and without the luck it's very very tough to survive out there, because it is really, it is hard to make games anyways. I think we can all agree, but then also fitting it in the right time slot, fitting, like being lucky, not releasing at the same time. Like what was the big controversy? Hollow Knight Silk Song,
Silk
yeah,
Song.
yeah, and like all these kind of things, and it's so hard to predict. And if you have to work hard, anyways, it's super hard to keep your eyes everywhere. So at the end, yeah, a little bit of luck you need. If not, can be. So I think that's the biggest one, is like just work hard. Don't think too much about the timing, but be aware that timing is not something, and this kind of form of luck, it's very 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 tough to measure. It could be in 2 years it's very different to now. So, and that's the main issue, is like when you do big games, it is even tougher. When you do short games, you can fail fast, but if you do big games, you can just get the gap or the right timing. Yeah.
How do you mitigate against the risks of timing? Since none of us can time the market and we don't know what our competition is going to be, and we certainly don't even know what the market's going to look like for a
I
game that takes two
That's what I
plus years to build.
Yeah, that's what I basically did. It's like when I got, so just a little bit of a background. So in the high phase, we got investment by Riot Games, One Up Ventures, and Skycatcher. And we doubled that funding that we got with the German Games Fund. So we raised around $7 million. And when we had that money, we were doing more risky games. So we basically stepped out of our comfort zone. Yeah. Uh, Stepped out of our comfort zone, and then started as a strategy company. We also started building a shooter. Yeah. And that was, and getting out of these comfort zone and doing something else is always cost effective, cost problematic, but also you can, it can take longer, and so on and so on. And but now when there's less funding available, we go back and do less risky projects, smaller projects, shorter time frames. I think that's the key component. It's like that's the only thing that you can read, and this is your reality. You either have a lot of funding, or you see there's easy funding for you, then you can be more risky. But the moment you are basically getting when you see there's like the last 2 years, which were pretty tough on the funding side, you have to try to do smaller titles and less risky approaches there, because that's the point. It's like our last game here, the Kingdom, we did it exactly on time. We didn't waste 1 month. We said it would take us 8 months, and we exactly finished in 8 months. And that's what you have to do. You have to basically do this stuff in time. If you don't do this, you can run out of money very fast.
So you have an interesting approach at the studio level to essentially risk is the way I'm thinking of it. So
Yeah,
it seems like you have almost this idea of risk on versus risk off game projects, and things that add to risk would be if the delivery schedule looks like it's going to take a lot longer, if it needs new tech, if it's a genre you haven't exactly done before, like all the things that are outside of the core. And time, of course, is one of these things. You said timing, which is partly like when it ships and like just market timing a little bit, not just runway, but like runway for the title. Keep it tight so that you don't start adding more and more risk, more and more capital to the equation by running it out further and further and further.
yeah.
And in a capital constrained environment, sounds like you get pretty conservative. You figure out, you know, what can you ship faster, kind of risk off projects,
I
things
mean,
that are
to a certain
maybe like the
extent,
current game.
yeah. I mean, that's and to a certain extent, it's probably also our background. So it's funny because the same stance that I have now, I had before 2020 when the big craziness happened, and it's probably also because this is I mean, for us as a at first, probably also the background, we're here in Europe. For us, we have a lot of positive things here in Europe, but also when it comes to making it's like when you have employees, you can't hire and fire. That's not doable in Europe. So these kind of things, and this is something, by the way, that we share with a lot of other the Swedish studios and so on and so on. It's not that simple to do. So I think that's the point where when we had when we don't have massive funding, we have to be also careful. This is something that, I mean, it's really positive for our employees and they love it for that, but it's also difficult as an entrepreneur to understand. It's like in Europe, it's not that simple to just scale up and down. You can't do that instantly. I had to scale down when a little bit scale down when Take Two took over Gearbox, and then basically the game was sunset. So
Mm.
Homeworld, which we worked on, and then I had to scale down. And these kind of things are time intensive and costly in Germany. Um, Not as expensive as someone would think, but nevertheless, it is not a simple thing. Probably, I don't know, like a little bit like in California or so. So like in one of the more regulated states, but these kind of things are really important to understand, and that's why I have to adapt, and I think that's the key component. And another thing that probably you can learn is like you constantly have to adapt to the market, the situation, and see what is out there. I think that's the key component, and have to be and try to minimize risk and costs. I mean, this is why, like as an example, with our current game that has so much. We have so much experience with the tech around it, so I feel really comfortable just releasing it in a state where I know normally we would be much longer in soft launch, but here we can afford it.
When you talk about that adaptability, that's not just tech, that's like culture of a studio. How do you breed that kind of adaptability into the culture of the studio so that you get the team kind of on the same page in terms of, yeah, we got to pivot quickly or change
Yeah,
the design?
yeah,
Because in some studios it would be like, no way, we've planned this for a year, of
yeah.
course, like we wouldn't want to change anything now.
For me, it's honesty and directness. I mean, that's I always share every Monday when we have a town hall. I share how much money we have in the bank account. I share
Mm.
what deals I'm working on. I share what kind of deals falling through. I try to be as honest as possible. This is not always perfect. Don't get me wrong. There are people there are sometimes skitterish around it. There are people that are then also a little bit worried. But that's the point. If I want from people to work hard for me and work great for us, I think uh, I also have to be. I think they also earned the trust to be honest to them. And I think this honesty then also helps basically building a clear goals inside of the studio. So like I said, when we we had growing pains, I was honest as well. It's like we have to get together again, because like I said, when you grow, I think we started at 25 people or so, and then we went up. I think at peak it was 70, and the point there is like there's a lot of growing pains when you do these kind of things, and you have to, if you're honest, you can try to cut through bullshit that happens when you grow bigger. I think that's the key component. I'm pretty happy that we never grew much bigger, because the problem is that kind of strategy works kind of well when you're not too big. Yeah, but because I think I don't know if you ever heard of, like, there's these breakpoints for a company. Yeah, like around 30 people, around 70 people, I think 120, 300, and so on. And then all these breakpoints are based on what kind of relationship you have with your employees, what kind of relationship you have with how you basically communicate. And I think this is why I felt pretty happy still, even with the 70 people. But I know when you grow bigger, it becomes harder, because they're, to adapt as well.
I had a theory that every time you go to a new Fibonacci number of headcount, that you end up with a fundamentally not fundamentally different. Like, you always inherit a lot of the company, but like important structural things around communication, politics, culture can change a lot, and those are sort of like the danger zones. So ideally, you carry forth all of the culture to each stage, but it requires a lot of effort. And it's as simple as like, when you go from 1 to 2 people, suddenly that's different than you being by yourself, and then 2 to 3 people, like, it's different. Like, now there's one person that can persuade the other 2 people.
And then the second thing is, I think this is really key for all of us, is like, and this is then also on the business side of level. As an example, when I saw that a lot of, I mean, we were very close to Series A in end of 22. We had some like at least verbal term sheets, and then I decided to wait a little bit longer, and then some of that was the Series A was falling through. I got funding later, but not as much. But what I then learned after then, I tried then for 1 year the whole VC route again to get a Series A, and it was just very, very tough market. And so I got back to, and this is what you started at the beginning, the discussion. Then I basically looked into publishers, because the good thing about publishers, it's just a different kind of want from them. They, depending on the publisher size, and we can talk about that as well, they have very different needs of how big a game has to be and how big you have to be. And if we see some were fine before and thought, oh yeah, the 100 million will be easy for everyone, and now it's not the case anymore. But you still find publishers or someone that is supporting you financially and on the publishing side, that is also have not the same expectation. And so the good thing for that is you can basically adapt then to that, trying to get funding from people that are that have a different outlook. The only problem is they have their own needs and they have their own things they want, from KPIs to other things, and you have to pitch the right project to the right publisher, similar to VCs, but it's just a different setup there, and it's much more about what is there already than when you do a pre-seed with a VC.
I totally want to get into the publisher, the funding conversation. We've had some comments from the audience already that we want to get into that, but I just want to drill into the culture piece a little bit more, because I think it's really interesting and it doesn't get talked about enough in the game industry. So first of all, I love this, I'd call it radical transparency that you have with your team. You're telling them the cash in the bank account every week. I personally love that. I like even the aspect of like, I mean, there'll be some people that's just too stressful for, and that's okay. Like, if that's too stressful, then it's also fine that, like, not every company is for every person. So like,
exactly.
If that's too stressful to know how much cash is in the account and you just want to put your blinders on and work, certainly there are other places to go for that. But I personally found that, like, you establish a super high level of trust, and when the bank account's low and you're just clear about it, and here's what we got to do to reverse that trend, then everybody gets on the same page and is on the same team about fixing that, instead of like suddenly the crisis where everybody's shopping their resume every time things aren't going exactly the right way. So I like it. Sounds like what you are thinking though is like, that doesn't scale past a certain point. Like you get too big, maybe that doesn't work. Is one of the takeaways that I had from you. But like, can you just sort of drill down into this radical transparency aspect a little bit and give people
Yeah.
advice? Because this is something people talk about, but I think most studios that I speak to, they're terrified of that. They're like, that's the job of CEO and the head of finance, and then like you guys just work on the game. We'll figure that out.
So I think that's the point. It's like radical transparency works if people trust in you as a person. And the problem is at when you're small, when you have a certain size, you hired every person there, probably, very likely.
Mm.
And after a certain size, that can get out of the way. So people don't know you. And I mean, I'm also quite often, I mean, I have my own office, sure, but I'm very often, we are hybrid. I mean, like many do nowadays, 2 days a week. And then I go over to the team and we discuss, we have meetings there and so on and so on. And also I go for lunch with them. It's a big thing in Germany. We all go for lunch together. That's it's a really weird thing that a lot of Americans didn't understand. So, but it's like literally slap. You have to go at lunch between 1 and 2. You can't do it shorter. You can't. You're not allowed to do it on your desk. Literally, there's laws. There's literally laws for that. And so I often go with the whole team. And so when they know me and understand me and we have a personal connection, and that works kind of fine with like 30, 40 people, um, um, that is then when I then be radically honest and explain to them things, they understand it and trust me. If you're bigger, it's hard to trust. If someone is just far away in the office, and that's the problem. Even with the 70 people, I had a CEO, I had a COO back then, I had an operations manager back then, I had a much bigger admin team, and so I really feel the difference even, and that's the only good thing about scaling down. I mean, no, that's not the only good thing. There's also other things like cash flow and stuff like that. But having a smaller studio is just getting back that personal collection that you kind of even lost. And like I said, at the 70 people mark, there was for sure a few people I know them all, sure, by name, yeah, but at the end, because at the end I do a lot of times the final discussion with them. But I had really, but you don't have close connections, and that's where it felt a little bit loose. And I think 60, 70 is really the absolute maximum to connect, at least on some personal level. But the real personal connection, I think that basically is like this 30, 40 people is a good one.
So it sounds like one of your team members is tuning in to endorse what you're saying. So you just you just earned some online points from that.
Yeah,
Um, well, let's talk about publishing because
yeah,
we're halfway through, and I definitely want to spend time on this. So, publishing financing, like you said, it was easy in 2021 when we had zero interest financing and
yeah.
capital was just flowing in. Then it got hard, and it got a little easier again. Then it got hard again. Um, do you first of all, do you agree that it's kind of harder right now? And like what how would people
It's
go and
different.
finance their studio?
It's different. I
Hmm.
think there was I think it already stopped being easy in 22. But in 23 we still had the Web3 wave. Yeah, and I I mean I have Web3 game, and I'm happy to have it. Don't get me wrong, but I'm honest to you. It's like that was where there was still some funding left and some opportunities left. But then 24 and 25. Now looking into these years, it got tougher and tougher. At the moment, we are at the lowest point ever in VCs. In studios, is even lower. It's the lowest ever in studios. I think since 2015 or 16 or something like that. And I think what changed also is like, and that was the big why it gets a little bit easier nowadays is that in 2024 there was so much studios that had nearly finished games, yeah, and so from publishers to other people just could pick them up. So it was even tougher to get new games funded because there were so many half finished or nearly finished games. So now slowly I think the market starts a bit again. And in our case, like I said, publishing, the publishers need more games. And I think now there's a bit more there. The only problem is if you have original IP, and that's, I mean, the golden goal for every one of us. Original IP. it's very, very tough without a lot of testing, a lot of data to get a publisher for. I think that's the key
Yeah.
component. Is like, if you do work for hire, that's still running. We got it offered. We did that before. I mean, Homeworld was basically, it was a co-development basically, but it was also kind of a work for hire. So that is still, and this is now kind of still working. But original IP at the moment is the toughest. The only thing you can do is to be doing very small titles, doing titles that like that are that are easy to reproduce. Easy, I make that in air quotes. Yeah, that was Homeworld, and it's really interesting because, like I said, this was the first game I ever reviewed on PC, and we were tasked to do a mobile game for it. And this was, I mean, I have to be honest, that was the cool thing ever to work on a one of the most beloved IP that you ever did yourself. And I think it was a fantastic game. And I'm sad that it's not running anymore. We had a very dedicated community. But yeah, but that was in 2019. I think we got that deal, and I think nowadays even publishers are risk averse. And now we have the last bit, which are a bit more complicated in publishers. They are the really big ones. I talk about the Scopely's, the Lilith games, the Century games. For them, a successful game looks much, much bigger. So like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most mobile games that are built by them are made by hundreds of people. Um, and there's not a lot of studios that are up for that small team but still ambitious. I think that's the biggest challenge, to find the right. So like, as an example, I can't tell you what, but I had a really big license and I made a really cool prototype last year, and it's a really, really big license. And I got to go from the license holder, and I pitched that to a lot of studios, a lot of publishers, and it was this kind of size, like 5-10 million, something like that. And it was really frustrating that in this size, there's not a lot of room. So that you have that quite in other places as well. You see that even in normal premium development, you have either the really, really big guys, yeah, or the really, really small ones. It got a little bit better. Indie helped a lot and stuff like that, don't get me wrong. And a lot of big fails also helped. Concord, as an example. But I think that's the sad thing, is like, at the moment, and that's also because of VCs. VCs, as good as it was to get all that money, VCs also, they were basically all targeting this target size, and that money is now gone. And there's not a lot of publishers that cover that kind of medium-sized development, especially in mobile, because in mobile it's either very quirky, intelligent use of 2D games, or it's the really, really big guy. It's like the Tencent Timmy games. Yeah, it's like the Delta Forces and all these kind of ones. There's not a lot of room for the middle ground at the moment.
Mm. All right. So first of all, on a personal level, I love your story about you played Homeworld, you reviewed it. 20 years later, you got to make the game.
Yeah,
When I was a teenager, I mean, I grew up with Star Trek. I loved Star
yeah.
Trek, and actually, at 14 years old, I made a shareware game called Final Frontier. So it's obvious where that name came from Star Trek.
Yeah.
But I did
Battlestar
not
Galactica.
dream.
Wait,
I did not dream as a kid of ever making a Star Trek game. So about 10 years ago, I got to make a Star Trek game, which was amazing. And the game
Which
is
one
still
was it?
running.
Which
Star
one
Trek
is it?
Timelines. Yeah, it's a
Ah,
mobile
Timelines.
game.
Yeah, I know Timelines pretty well.
Yeah,
I
no,
really
it's a
like
good
it.
game. It's had
Yeah,
about it's had 6 million installs. So it's done reasonably well, and people are still playing it every single day. It's got a very devoted audience. Maybe not Scopely scale like you were saying, but big enough to keep it going for a
yeah.
decade now. So
But
also,
that's just, yeah. But even games like Star Trek Timelines. I mean, like I said, one of the reasons why I didn't get that IP game made was also, yeah, there's minimum guarantees and stuff like that. And it was not just the development budget that was one problem, but another problem was also minimum guarantees, all the other things that are around licenses. And I think, again, this is like, at the moment, there's for indie mobile and development teams, it's especially tough. I think in the indie market, I think there's a lot of project financing, there's a lot of
hmm,
diverse market for this kind of smaller ones. But on mobile, it's quite tough. You either make a game alone, and that's what you can do. Even with 5, 6 people, you can make a successful game on mobile if you're good enough, and
Mhm.
if you choose the right target. But like for this medium size at the moment, there's not tons of room. Again, it's still sometimes, like I said, Dawn of Ages, but again, Dawn of Ages was also with the support of German Games Fund and the VCs. I'm not sure we could have financed it with a publisher normally. I know there's some people that get these kind of bigger deals. I know people that really got to this really big ones, but it's very rare. Normally they do it with internal teams. That's
Mm.
most big publishers. They use internal teams for these kind of things, and they don't outsource a whole project anymore. Scopely did this pretty cleverly with Star Trek Fleet Command, the first one, or other ones where they basically they did a really great job of using external teams, or Tilting Point did it quite a bit, and then they invest in it and stuff like that. So they had a really good way of basically how they do that. But sadly at the moment it's not as easy to do anymore. And also, yeah, because there's so many studios out there that need work.
Yeah. Well, so let's do some real talk though for game studios that are out there looking for financing. So
Yeah.
if we look across the landscape of sources of capital, Web3 has largely dried up,
Yep.
right? Because not a lot of, first of all, the blockchains themselves don't really have any money to grant anymore, and there's very few people who will fund it because scale hasn't been proven yet.
Yeah.
That said, I should say, like, we support a lot of Web3 games at Beamable, like mythical games with FIFA Rivals and Pudgy Party. A good example of someone who's doing
Yeah.
quite well in Web3, but that's now the exception, not the rule. And a lot of it is internally funded at this stage, or people who raised a lot of money years ago, not currently. So, okay, so Web3, really challenging. VCs, it's just, I guess, the reality that they just don't have as much capital anymore because their funds by and large have struggled, and they've struggled to get the next funds set up to fund games. So if you go after VCs, mostly, I mean, and of course there's differences between different funds, and some of the very, very top tier guys can still do whatever they want, but for the most part, you're chasing like the smaller and smaller funds that they've got, which they're kind of reserving for existing investments to keep people alive in some
Yeah.
cases. So then we've got publishers, and you made an interesting point though, which is publishers are in the business of shipping games. So in some ways they have to ship games. That's the good news, right? Like,
Yeah.
so this is a market we can go after, because if they don't ship games, they're out of business. And some of them definitely are still out there for third party game developers. Um, Sounds like that's where you see the opportunity right now to fund things, is aligning the right publisher and like the scale of game that they need. Because you made a good point, which is like a very, very super large publisher does not necessarily want games that are going to make $10 million a year. They need it to be $100 million a year. So
Yeah.
finding the right publisher for the scale of the game that you can actually pull off is an important piece of advice, just to be aware of that. What else? First of all, do you agree with my assessment of funding
Yeah,
sources?
I
And
mean,
then,
the second thing is, you don't get any money anymore for decks or stuff like that.
mhm.
Um, um, Most publishers on mobile, and that's why I said that the indies have it a little bit better, because there the game needs to be fun. Sure, I mean that's a given, I would say. But there, if the game is fun and there's people on the other side to believe in it, they ship the game. But most publishers on the mobile side, they want to see KPIs. And what we do already, we do things like art tests, where we did this for our new next title, that are currently in last discussion with publishers. Um, Again, uh, where we basically did we did even art styles. We did different art styles. We ran it through Facebook, and the Facebook campaign went into a survey, and then we looked at click-through rates and stuff like that. So what we did, we have to basically provide more and more data to basically be able for them to say, okay, I want to invest in that, I want to do that, because for them it's all a lot of times also big investment, time, resources on there, and so on and so on. So, and the more data you have, the better. So what we did already for the next game, we provided half of the funding through the German Games Fund. We provided an artist to see what kind of art is working, a full high-level game design, a prototype that is playable. So all of that, and that is for some publishers not enough, because they want more KPIs, because for them is also about de-risking, like everyone is doing at the moment. So if you have a game in soft launch and you have good KPIs, then it becomes really interesting. As an example, Dawn of Ages was kind of medium successful, and then we added one or two features which basically exploded the KPIs. Return on ad spend was high, retention was much higher, day 7 of like 17 to 18%. And then were on this weird path. So then finally I could have asked investors to invest in it and then build your own thing, but that could have taken months and months and months. Or you talk to a publisher where you know they can scale. They don't give you as much money, but you have a certain security through, because you know they can scale the game, because you know they have enough financial, so they will not go under, and they can support the burn of the studio. And that's basically where some of these decisions then happen. So like for me, every game is like a journey. You start at zero, and you have to basically go through several steps before you can start approaching publishers. You can go to more steps to then approach different publishers. It's basically, and that's now dependent on the style, the genre, and the platform. And these kind of things you have to, if you map it out, you basically have, every game has its own journey, and a point in time where it would be potentially financial, would have be financeable, and that's the point. How you have to look at your game is like, where could that be? And again, when you're in indie studio and you do a really nice vertical slice and it looks good and it triggers the right point, that is where you can potentially get funding and get in. But for mobile game, going outside of having hard KPIs, and even if it's like retention KPIs, it's super tough to see. Most studios out there, and the funny bit is, like, I want to make that clear, as we had hyper casual, that was, there was another thing that happened, and then a little bit went away. They're still there, don't get me wrong, but that was funnily also one opportunity where even small studio could make some bucks, mostly together with the big guys. But there you can just test the prototype and then see the KPIs, and then had that opportunity. But now when ad revenue went a little bit down, now we're in a situation again where this gets tougher again. So you have to look at your game, check where could be a good point in time where you approach it, and the more stuff you have, the wider, the more people you can approach. I think that's the most important thing, and for that you have to have either experience or someone helping you with basically understanding what is the drivers for a positive decision on the market.
Okay, so again, real talk for game developers here, struggling to figure out what to do. Number one, PowerPoint decks are not getting funded. Games are getting funded, right? At least a vertical slice.
Yeah,
Like games get funded, not
yeah,
ideas.
yeah. Ideas are
People
cheap.
fit up with ideas. Everyone can you go to Gen AI, make a beautiful looking deck in 5 minutes. So like
Yeah,
that's not as important as it might have been 10 years ago. Aligning to the publisher and their platform, the size of game, genre expertise,
yeah,
important. Number three, particularly in mobile, but probably for everybody, I would think, is identifying the KPIs that are important for that publisher and being able to express some understanding of where your KPIs are already, even if it's sort of like art tests with ads and stuff, can still be useful for that. So that's really important. The thing I see in a lot of decks from game developers is they just love their idea. They love their product idea. They like to talk about the product. And so much of the deck is here's our product idea and the cool features in it. And of course, anyone likes to see that passion, but I think it's important for people to remember. This is my advice to people. I try to advise them that usually the people who look at these decks, they like games too, but they're ultimately financial professionals kind of making a decision about like money in, money out. How do I make money with this? Like, and there has to be a fairly coherent business case presented before you can even wow them with your cool game ideas.
Yeah, exactly. And I have to say, don't get me wrong, there's some really good examples out there, but even they have a tougher times. Remember, we had from Kowloon Knights, Kepler Interactive. I don't know you know these guys. They were like big investors into indie studios in also around 21, 22. But even for them, it's like even in the premium market, got tougher and tougher. You know, so many high profile premium titles failed lately. Especially even the live ops ones, even the big ones, like from with big investments. So I think that's why overall this is like keeping in mind when you want to make your dream game, it's just keeping in mind, can you support that? Are you able to make so like having a great vision is good, but that's why people want to see these vertical slice, because they want to see, can you make that game a reality? And because game development is so hard, especially in more in multiplayer and stuff like that, like especially when it goes into the online service. I mean, Beamable is a good example. Live ops is fucking hard. I mean, we have 3 live ops games. It is tough as nails. Keeping the people excited, getting content, events, everything going. And I think, and this is the point. It's like, if you don't show this kind of experience, stay small, stay focus on what you know you can ship. And sure, there's always these examples out there of people that, oh, I just started a little bit game development and now I sold 10 million copies. But this is sadly 99% not the reality. And if you depend on the money, and if you have, besides all your energy and your excitement about game industry, you also want to make some money, you'll be able to hopefully do that, and focus on a smaller project.
So we might be able to now converge the topic between AI and what we've been talking about. I do want to come back to live ops in a moment, but Ryan had this comment, like, what are your thoughts on publishers versus AI-powered marketing publishing? But I want to, thanks for the question, Ryan, but I want to expand that question even bigger, because you mentioned AI and we didn't get to talk about it in the beginning. You said that maybe it's helpful in some ways. So I'm just interested in your perspective on where AI can currently be applied to help studios build, market, any aspect of the
Yeah.
business of game
I
production.
mean, that's why Ryan's point is not that bad. If you have, and this is the point, and but it's the sad that some of these opportunities are going away again. So I know quite a few studios here in Berlin. They came out of some bigger mobile studios, Colibri, Popcore, stuff like that, Vuga, and so on. And they did like small teams, 5 people. They had one UI guy, and they were able to scale the games quite good alone, because they had AI, and they had the opportunity to basically scale it properly. The only problem that you had, a lot of these games were scaled based on a one core element. Some of them were getting really nice deals from some of the ad providers. There was deals out there back then. So if you didn't get investment money or you didn't get publisher money, there was some opportunities in the core years. Like, it was a bit later. So I think 22, 23 was good years for these kind of deals where you, and Uplovin and all these other big guys, they gave you big credit line. And so if you showed with small money that you were profitable, they gave you a big credit line and you could scale. And now it comes, I know a lot of these teams, creatives is not a problem anymore. That's the good thing about AI. So per se, you don't need shit tons of people anymore to do it, but you still need cash. I think that's the key component to say when it comes to the publishing part. AI is great now for content, and honestly, if you're like a video cutter or ad creative a producer, you're one guy and you do the job of 10, something like that. Especially, this is one of the best examples, by the way, for AI, because linear content, AI content, is super easy to do. super easy to do, like always. Not that easy, but it's much easier to do with AI than a lot of the other things out there. Everything from text to video to pictures, everything which is not interactive. This is the things that AI can help you tremendously with, and that's what he's right. If you have cash or you're already at the right point in time, I think you don't need a massive publishing team anymore. That's the good thing. But you still
Hmm.
need cash to be able to run the ads and everything. All the optimization with AI helps, but it doesn't change the fact that without the access to the cash, it's very hard to scale because payment periods are long. I mean, in our games, it's like 5-6 months to get your money back, and fronting that alone is very, very tough.
Hmm. Okay, well, let's bring it back to live ops now, which you just were touching on with AI, and we were talking about earlier. As you put it, live ops is fucking hard.
Yeah.
I'll start with just my own observation and what one piece that I think is important, but I'd love you to share your thoughts on live ops and some of your learnings that you have earned in this industry that people ought to be thinking about. Now, you pointed at some interesting things. Like live ops is also very broad. It's what happens in the game, but it's also things like user acquisition and aligning that back to the game. The One of the biggest overall lessons I have learned from game development is that velocity of development is really important, and having that high velocity informed by data. So we talked a lot about KPIs earlier. So actually using that data to change your game in important ways or add new content that reflects the things that people pay for example, ends up being really important. So that's a takeaway that I would share. That's kind of why I started Beamable, just to give
Yeah.
people the velocity so that they can react to things instead of what I see in a lot of studios where everyone talks about the KPIs and they're like, okay, but what do we do about it? We can't move
Yeah.
fast enough.
Yeah.
What are your takeaways, Kristian?
I mean, you're correct, and I think that is the holy grail. I'm honest to you. I have to look deeper into Beamable because I know what it is, and I don't get me wrong, but honestly, it would be interesting to look at it because we use our own tools. We have different tools.
Expensive to
Called
do. Yeah.
yeah, it's expensive to do, but we were able to afford it for some time. And we have something called a Game Master tool where we have a lot of these stuff in basically built ourselves. But even there, the problem that you have is like you can have a lot of times the main issue is you have a game and a client which needs stability, and you have live ops tools and online services which need flexibility. And what we have quite a bit is the problem that we currently even have with our games is that even either you have the stability, but then it's much harder to do live ops because you do a lot of things very hard, or you have the flexibility, but then you have to be careful what you do with the client. And so for us, was one of the key components, being honest, going forward, is like that we try to find a good middle ground. At the moment, we have to do too much ourselves because and this is even when you start a development, our lead programmer that built our base system was very programmer friendly. So he made sure that we can't break the game too much. But that basically had the downside that when we do live ops, it is much more, it's like all the tools, all the hardcore tools besides exporting and importing, live when it comes to balancing and everything, live in Unity to make sure that you don't break shit. And
Mhm.
I think these kind of things are super important. So, and I haven't found a good solution yet. Probably I have to look into Beamable to basically check out how can you fix that situation, making sure that your game doesn't break and making sure you're flexible enough. At the moment, it takes us too much time to set up events. It taking us too much time to react to data sometimes, and sometimes we have to find out, okay, we did a new event and it doesn't perform as we know, and when we repeat an event, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So like a lot of these data things, it is about experimentation, don't get me wrong, but if you need to stay profitable, and if you and that's one of the goals that we have in our publisher, it's just a very tough thing to do a live ops the right way, spending the right amount of money, using it at the right point in time for the right things. I think that's the toughest bit about it.
Yeah. So I kind of learned a lot about live ops when I shipped Game of Thrones, and every time an episode of game, so we were updating right after every episode of Game of Thrones. So
Yeah,
show would come out on Sunday. Monday we shipped an update with items, characters, things you actually saw on the show, so that we could form that connection between it. And we did this every week during the time of the live season. And then we continued it off season and kind of told other stories outside of the main story loop. But we had to kind of create that high velocity system where events, content, everything could be dropped in and updated over time. Where we ultimately landed with Beamable is creating a platform that's, you mentioned Unity. So we made it so that you can code your back end with C Sharp, just like your front end, keep the languages all the same up and down the stack, and have just lots and lots of tools that manage all the data structures and things for the typical live ops cases like events and tournaments
yeah.
and characters and all the things that happen. So we've invested heavily in that. We love to share it with studios like you. And sometimes you find places where you've already built a lot of stuff, and maybe we just start helping with one little piece. And
Yeah.
then if we can help with there, you can grow it over time. We
I
also
mean,
don't think
I'm
of it as
also
all or
very
nothing.
curious. Yeah, and also I'm very curious about these kind of things because for me, I want to understand what makes you tick, what makes your life ops tool tick, because I think that's the biggest thing for me personally. Is like I love and breathe life ops. I really love. I'm still every day for 1.5 hour. So in our Discord, I chat with the people there. We have like 20,000 people in Dawn of Ages alone, and I still love to chat with them. I want to understand how they are ticking, because this is the point. Besides the quantitative analytics, you also need the qualitative stuff directly from
Yeah,
the team.
you need it all. All
Yeah,
right, Kristian. Well, speaking of live ops, you launched the game today,
yeah,
and we're at the hour. We're at 1 minute
yeah,
over. So I'm going to let you get back to all the stuff that you have to do with the new
yeah.
game launch. Congratulations on it again. Wish you only great success. I think you have so many nuggets of wisdom from this conversation that I'm imagining lots of these sound bites being spread all over the internet. And I hope game developers benefit from it. But Kristian, thank you so much for being here. Thank
Thank you for
you,
having me.
all of you. Yeah, and thank you, Kristian. And thank you, Oscar, for being here. And thanks everybody in the audience for tuning in. Your time's so valuable, but you spent it with us, me and Kristian and Oscar. So congratulations on doing that. Hope you found it useful, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you. Bye bye.